All right. You ready for today?
I'm ready. I'm always ready.
What are we doing today?
Today we're gonna hit some sumo deads. And I'll just be running you guys through on how to set up and kind of what to focus on while you're performing the lift to help you guys deadlift either conventional or sumo. So.
What is going on YouTube? My name is Marlon Orellana and I'm working with Norris here to show you guys how to pull both conventional and sumo. There's some pointers that I necessarily see in the sumo pull for anybody really, and I wanted to show that to Jesse today, and he actually surprisingly has a really nice sumo. The one thing I will show you that I really like about his sumo, you'll see in a minute, but I'll explain in detail that. It's the one thing that I actually really like, because I actually struggle doing that, but there's other things that he obviously struggles with because he's so used to doing conventional. So to start things off, we're gonna be asking a couple questions, but the number one question is...
Yeah, so what do you guys prefer to lift with your deadlift? Conventional or sumo, and why do you prefer that? Me personally, I do prefer conventional stance, but I've been working a lot in sumo, and I actually think that sumo deads do benefit my conventional pull as well. So I think the two can go hand in hand. Obviously, a couple different muscle groups utilized there, but it can really help you key in your form and focus.
So what would you say is a couple of things that you personally struggle with sumo?
I'd say sumo, the biggest thing for me is coming off the floor, and I think that's natural with that stance, but really keeping things tight, keeping my shoulders from moving forward and rounding up the back. So it's really just focusing that area, as well as keeping my knees out over my toes as to not push the bar out further in front of me, and making that pull or lift that much harder to do. So a couple of my weaknesses there, things that I focus on in the lift, and then obviously some of that goes hand in hand with my conventional pull, so it's kind of cool to see and feel.
I think for me personally, the hardest thing for conventional is just, and this is a weird case scenario, I actually really struggle with breaking ground. I don't fully understand why. That's kind of one of the reasons why I switched to sumo, was because I was like, well, if I already have trouble breaking ground, I might as well just use sumo because it's gonna help me break ground, I thought, but not really.
Yeah. You know, a lot of guys with that, I think with sumo, you're kind of shortening your range of motion out of your quads. So then when you go into that conventional stance, you really got to use that kind of lower end of your leg. That's obviously not scientific talk, but rather just me spewing shit. But anyway, so I think that he's been lifting sumo for so long that just going in that conventional stance, he hasn't quite developed that the quad in the similar stance that me doing conventional all my life. Like, I've got that really developed already. So I think he's just kind of missing that out there, but it should develop quick, and who knows.
So again, this isn't really scientific based. We kind of just want to get straight to the point.
Bro science.
We don't want to bore you with any of that. And then it honestly comes down to just the easier you make things, the better they click, I think, to be honest.
Yeah, and you gotta always think about, me and him, very different body types. What works for me might not work for him, and it's going to be similar for you guys. You got to test the waters for yourself, see what feels best, and work with that. So, yeah.
All right, let's get it. So actually, we could say one thing first.
Oh, shoes. Shoes, yes. You want a flat-footed shoe. You don't want your heels elevated. I've seen some guy wear squat shoes. Have you ever seen squat shoes on a deadlift? I don't understand that at all, but basically, you want a flat, stable shoe, get you as close to the bar as possible. and stability purpose. I don't think there's much else you need there.
So I personally use wrestling shoes just because, as you can tell by the grip, it's very sticky.
I used to wear a wrestling shoe when I deadlifted too. Yeah. All right, so one thing I do is later in my working sets, you'll see I alternate. So you just want to be sure that you alternate your stance while you're warming up. As I move up weight, I go from conventional to sumo, back to conventional to sumo, just to warm up both areas, because you will be utilizing some different muscle groups within each lift.
So let me bring up that one point that I was talking about earlier. Look at his shoulders. All right. You can't really see much from that angle, but how about this? So if I were to magically draw a line, you would see his shoulders are in line with the bar. And that's the number one thing that you really want on sumo. There's one, obviously a good tip for any deadlift in general. If it's conventional or sumo, you gotta take the slack out of the bar. The only problem is I'm very guilty of yanking the heck out of that bar. He's really good at taking the slack out, like he's very patient with it. And you need to develop that habit. So that goes for both sumo and conventional. I feel as if that sumo is a little bit less forgiving because it's just like, if you get out of positioning, I don't know, for me sumo is just not forgiving in general. Yeah, it's a lot harder to recover. So I'm gonna go ahead and try my best to take out the slack out of this bar, especially since it's a deadlift bar. I'm like, Another thing is this floor, you want to avoid at all times, because the thing is your feet will slip. Like I catch myself slipping on this. We're only using this for demonstration purposes. So yeah, that's why we're doing this.
All right, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go over Marlon's point as to not try to jerk the bar. You see so many guys go up and try to really explode off the floor. And what happens when people do that is they're here and then they immediately try to jerk and their low back comes up. And you're just rounding from there. Same thing with sumo. So when you're out and you try to jerk it, your back's typically gonna lose its position in the hips and you'll be rounding your back and you're gonna make the lift that much harder. And typically when you're maxing, you're not gonna be able to recover from that. So keep that in mind. You wanna be patient with it, as Marlon pointed out earlier. All right, get a little chalk. And I think my focuses for conventional and sumo are pretty similar, so I'll go through them here. So conventional, we're setting up just about shoulders width. I wouldn't say any more than that, and your hands are right outside your feet. I always pull under over grip. So when I'm coming here, I'm set, my feet are set onto the bar, my hips are high, and what I do is I really try to load my hamstrings. So I'll pull myself into the bar. I'm pulled in. I'm probably trying to lift about 60 pounds here. So you're not just trying to wiggle yourself into position, you're actually resisting into the position. Now once you're here, you're pushing through. The lift shouldn't be a pull. You shouldn't really feel like you're pulling with your back. You should mostly feel like you're pushing through your legs. Okay, so that's conventional. Now here with my sumo, as Marlon said earlier, this floor kind of sucks. Not the best, but luckily I'm a little wider than him, so my feet do hit the rubber edge and I'm able to kind of keep my position a little better. So I get my shins about to the ring. My feet are pointed at about a 45, and I want my knees to track out towards that. You don't want them coming in, because that's going to push the bar away from your center of gravity, making the lift that much more difficult. Okay?
So you're here. Now for me, it's kind of the same thing as conventional. I'm loading my hamstrings, I'm loading my glutes, and I'm really pulling myself into position. So you're not here, you're pulling your lats in, you're getting tight, and then you're driving through the floor. Again. So both for me, I'm trying to load myself into the bar. I'm not just getting into position, I'm pulling myself into position to keep everything tight. Huh?
Okay, so honestly, I just deadlifted on Monday, so that's why these look very crappy and I'm rounding. So since I'm fatigued, this is a perfect time to explain to you what not to do. With the deadlift bar, like I said, I kind of round and I let it jerk me. You're gonna see my shoulders round forward instead of keeping my lats tight, and he's really good at keeping his lats activated. So especially with Sumo, I'm narrower than he is just because of the fact that he's a taller person. But I noticed that a good transition for conventional to Sumo would be to narrow your stance. Like his is pretty narrow relatively to the other Sumos. Some Sumo people exaggerate and they go like this. You don't want to do that. That's not the point of Sumo. So I find myself very efficient right here. And I point my toes about the same distance that he does. I don't go too narrow. I don't go too wide. The main thing is that you want your knees following the direction of your toes. And Jesse and I will say a lot of things that is repetitive, but the reason why they're repetitive is because you need to do it. You need to drill it in your head that these are the steps that you need to take to get a better Sumo progression, basically. If you ever feel like you're rounding, I noticed that when I try to really shove my feet this way, it helps me spread the floor as well as get myself back into position. And remember, the knees are the main thing, and I'm going to show you an example of the knee thing with Jesse. I'm calling him out, yes, but you'll see why. The one thing I swear by is positioning your knees. So the thing is here is that you want your knees pointing the same direction as your toes. Just focus on that, focusing out. And if you can tell right here, his left knee is a lot more flexible than his right. Main reason being is because he had SI pain. And I noticed that when I first transitioned to Sumo from conventional, my right knee would always cave in a lot. So let's see if, I don't know, he's been doing pretty well with his warm-up sets and not doing it, so let's keep it going, keep it going. Not that bad, not that bad. But look, watch. His right knee really follows his toes, but his left knee, sorry. His right knee, kind of struggling, but he's gonna get it, he's gonna get it. So that's honestly the only thing that Jesse would need to work on. Obviously mobility because he's so used to conventional. But besides that, like his hips are comfortable. Are they pretty comfortable where you're at right now?
I don't have any problems with my hips, so.
No.
That's the one thing I notice about Sumo, and people always try to convince people that you need to sit lower into the bar. Do not listen to them. Because the thing is, not everyone's the same flexibility. And you can tell by Jesse and I, we're two different people, we're two different range of motions, we're two different like flexibility, capability. That doesn't make sense?
Just two different people.
Two different people. So if anyone tells you for Sumo you need to sit down, that's completely wrong. What I like to do is sit back.
Yeah, so that goes to my point earlier of trying to load your hamstrings and glutes. You're not necessarily just sitting down, but you're kind of pulling yourself into it. You want to find that natural position for you. You don't want to go too low because then you're just going to be losing power off the floor. And you'll notice that on your lifts. If you go too low, your butt's just going to raise up automatically. So you'll be able to know when that is, when you're too low. I get to the position that I feel comfortable, everything's tight, and I can just push right off the floor without losing any of my positioning, really. So yeah, I think if you're going too low, it'll be easy to spot that. Because obviously, if you take a video, you'll notice your hips or your glutes, your butt, whatever, comes up off where you're at. So, yeah.
Trying to kill your finger.
She's cutting my finger off. Guest appearance.
Hey, baby.
By this bikini. I'm always 8 weeks out, if you haven't noticed.
What? This is the casting bench. We don't have couches here.
Casting bench. There we go. Should be the title of this.
That'd be pretty good.
If you get the reference, comment down below.
Yeah.
But seriously, like, knees, follow the direction of your toes. You really want to make sure that you're spreading the floor. Obviously, do not use wooden floors. See, that's pretty bad. My hips are somewhat high because A, I haven't pulled sumo in a while because I'm doing conventional, and B, I'm just comfortable there.
Yeah, I was just commenting on how your hips always stayed in position when you start off the floor. They didn't move at all. So, and that's what you want, really. The only thing Marlon can work on is really trying to pack them lats and keep those shoulders back. I think that's where he's struggling the most.
Definitely guilty of that. Definitely
So
guilty. I'm super guilty.
if he can strengthen those, I always used to do farmer carries, and that was a huge part of my back and upper back strength. And that's something maybe Marlon could try in the future, is farmer carries to help strengthen that upper back. That way when he pulls, his shoulders are already locked out, and that's really what you want. And it's just a pull from there, you know?
Yeah, I actually never thought about that, but no, the farmer's carry does make sense, to be honest. Like,
it's
you're
a
always
lot of
holding
upper
in
back
position.
strength. So.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I always thought it was grip, but at the same time, now I think now the way you, yeah.
Definitely is grip as well, but if you're doing it right, you'll feel it in your upper back. Because as you start to fatigue, you're just rounding, you know, so.
Yeah, no wonder you have a big deadlift. Huh. Let me start doing that.
All right, so thanks for tuning in to the video. It was quick and short, easy. I wanted to just go ahead and say we're gonna summarize what the key things are, but before we do, I just want to remind you guys, tag or share this to a friend who would
benefit.
Thank you. Who would benefit from this video. And go ahead and comment down below the best thing you learned today out of the video that we showed. And if you guys want more collabs like this, just comment down below. Or you can just say, why is that weak guy even showing you any pointers? But both work.
Yeah, well, what would you guys tell us after watching that video? What would you say about our form or technique? If you spotted anything maybe we missed? You know, it's always beneficial for us to collaborate, not just me and him, but you guys that are watching. You could benefit me or him, or just other people viewing the video, so always keep that in mind. Yeah. So I think my biggest tips for you guys were really loading the hamstrings and pulling yourself into the bar. I used to really talk down about sumo or make fun of him for pulling sumo. I always like to think of myself that I was lifting a functional lift doing conventional. But over the years, you know, messing up my low back, you have to work around certain things and use different techniques kind of as you go. And I think that's gonna be most relatable for all of us as we go through life, and as we are lifting over years and years, things happen. But the biggest thing I could tell after doing both lifts is that they are cross-trainable in my experience, and those tips I gave you with pulling yourself into the bar, pulling the slack out, and really loading your glutes and hamstrings translate to both your conventional and your sumo pull. So
my biggest thing is, like, one thing that he really does well, again I stress, keep your shoulders in line with the bar. Like, you can literally draw a straight line like a pencil on him. Even when he does, like, he's doing conventional heavy sumo, he still manages to keep it straight. The other thing is the knees follow the toes and make sure that they don't cave in. He's gonna work on that right knee.
Yeah.
So it's just like he said, the main thing is this is a fun sport, and obviously a lot of you guys are doing it for fun, and you know, especially there's a big gap in strength, and obviously like he's in a world elite lifter, I'm just a lifter. but that doesn't stop me from doing what I love. And my thing is that I want to stay healthy for as long as I can and lift heavy as long as I can, which he basically stressed to as well.
Yeah. And to that point, you know, even though I'm a world-class lifter, quote unquote, I can still pull knowledge from him when he's very knowledgeable on a sumo deadlift, where I've only been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks. Keep that in mind, you know, even though you might have been lifting longer and you can lift more than someone else, it doesn't mean they don't have knowledge to offer you. So humble yourself, be humble, stay humble, and always try to gather as much knowledge as you can. So.
All right, it was a pleasure. Till the next one.
To the next one.